Ours in case I get real hungry again.
Call to order City Council meeting for Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. If I could get a roll call, please. Gesby.
Here.
Grote.
Here.
Jepson.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Cronenberger.
Here.
Lundell.
Here.
Montgomery. Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I seek approval of tonight's agenda, because we had that work session before, I'm going to add under council business, item D will be city admin succession committee, and item E will be work session for July 23rd, just so we can take action on the record that we're going to put a work session in there. With that said, I would take a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Motion from Gesme. Do I have a second? Second from Jepson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Gets us to public input. Public input is intended to afford the public an opportunity to address concerns to the City Council. The public input will be no longer than 30 minutes in total length, and each speaker will have no more than 3 minutes to speak. Speakers may address topics relevant to the governance of the city. Speakers must sign up in advance and must provide their name, address, and the topic they intend to address. Comments must be on topic, respectful, pertinent to city business, and adhere to the applicable data privacy rules. Any speaker that violates these rules will be asked to sit down. If the speaker refuses to comply, they may be removed from the meeting. Speakers shall not address topics that are the subject of the public hearing. All such comments shall be made at the public hearing. The City Council will not generally act on issues raised by the public input, but may choose to schedule consideration of the item on a future agenda. Brian Jensen, Dollar General.
Yeah, I'm here for 1022 North Fifth Street for Progressive Rail. I talked with my boss. He told me to show up tonight. He said they're all good to go as long as the variances are met and there's an 8-foot fence. Like, I believe he talked to Travis already and they agreed to that. I believe that was set up in the last time we talked here. And he said he's not opposed to having a new building up. That's all I got.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That gets us to our presentation. Today we have our audit presentation from Tyler from Abdo Solutions.
Let me get hooked up here.
All right. Will this technically be a two-part with the executive governance and then the annual financial report?
So I'm just actually going over the financial statement audit presentation.
Perfect.
So just a one-part deal. So, all right. Well, thanks for having me tonight. My name is Tyler C., audit manager at Abdo. So as I said, just going over the financial statement audit presentation. So presentation's meant to be a high-level overview of the audit without getting too lost in the details. So kind of the main points that we feel like you should all be aware of. So what I'll be going over today is the audit opinion as well as our responsibility as auditors. I'll then go over the general fund and other governmental fund results as well as the enterprise funds. And then we end it with what we like to call key performance indicators. So looking at the audit results, so our responsibility as auditors is to issue an opinion on the city's financial statements. We are issuing what's called an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is a clean audit opinion. So the opinion you would be striving for in a financial statement audit. Throughout the course of the audit, we also do some testing around Minnesota legal compliance. So some testing around state statute. And we also have no instances of non-compliance to note. So clean audit opinion as well as no legal compliance issues for this year. We do have one audit finding for 2023. And if you've seen this presentation before, it might be familiar to you. This is the preparation of financial statements, internal control finding. Basically what this finding states is that we as your auditors are not only engaged to perform the audit, but also draft the financial statements. This is a recurring finding for the city, and it's a very common finding for a city of your size. So probably the most common audit finding that we issue. Sometimes throughout the course of the audit, we may review certain processes and procedures and decide to issue just auditor recommendations for future years. This year, we did come across a couple procedures that we thought could use some updating. The first one being the journal entry process. So kind Currently, right now, the finance staff, when they do journal entries, there's no formal review process internally on those journal entries. So we are recommending that a review process be kind of documented and performed throughout the year. And then the quarterly budget to actual financial reporting process. So currently, I believe the city internally does a quarterly financial budget to actual and kind of meets internally as department heads. But what we're actually recommending is that those budget to actual statements be included within council packets on a quarterly basis throughout the year. So just a couple of recommendations that we have for this year's audit. So then moving into the financial results, here what we're looking at is the general fund's fund balance compared to the city's fund balance policy. So what you're looking at on this graph is that orange bar is the city's general fund original budgeted expenditures from 2019 to 2024. That yellow line is your ending fund balance as a percent of those future years' budgeted expenditures. And then that black area is the city's fund balance policy, which is to maintain a fund balance between 40 to 50% of your budgeted expenditures for the following year. So what this graph is showing, or what the slide is showing, is that the city is meeting and exceeding that fund balance policy, which has been consistent from 2019 to 2023. Now looking at your general fund budget to actual results for 2023. So what you're going to see here is your original and your final budget for 2023 on the left, your actual results in the middle, and then the variance with that final budget on the right. So looking at top line revenues, you did have a positive revenue variance with your budget. This was mostly due to public safety aid as well as positive investment earnings for this year. Looking at the next line, your expenditures came in just a little bit below budget, but all in all, extremely comparable to that final budget, just $26,000 under that budget. And then you're also going to see several transfers. So the big line item there is that $727,000 transfer outline item. That's several transfers going into different capital project funds, kind of saving up for future capital projects. So all in all, the general fund's fund balance did increase about $370,000, and this bottom line, $3.6 million. That's your year-end general fund fund balance. Then moving on here to your general fund revenues by type. So just looking at your main revenue sources in the general fund from 2021 to 2023. So of course your property tax levy is your main revenue source in the general fund. And then your intergovernmental revenues, you see an uptick in 2023 due to the public safety aid receipt. And then those miscellaneous and other revenue sources, all in all, those last 3 years have stayed pretty consistent overall. And then same format to this slide here, but now looking at your expenditures by type from 2021 to 2023, split out between your different departments, your general government, public safety, public works, and culture and rec. And then that other expenses, the main thing in that category would be those transfer outs into the capital project funds. So overall, pretty consistent, over the last 3 years. And I did note that between 23 and 22, your general fund expenditures increased by about $30,000 in total. So overall, pretty consistent. Now moving on to your special revenue funds. Right now the city has 3 special revenue funds. So this graph just shows your 3 funds at the top, then the fund balance between 2023 and 2022 and the increase or decrease. And then the bottom there just shows your different fund balance categories and what kind of is made up of all the different funds. So overall, your special revenue funds stayed pretty consistent between the last 2 years and increased about $10,000 in total. Here, just looking at your debt service funds. So this graph just shows the cash and assets as well as debt outstanding in each of the debt service funds. Then also the maturity date for each of the bonds outstanding. And then the bottom half of the slide there just shows the future 10 years debt service obligation broken out between principal and interest. Now this slide looking at the capital project funds, so same format here as the special revenue funds. So just all your funds listed out and the difference in fund balance between 2023 and 2022. And the bottom half again just shows kind of what's made up of, what your fund balance is made up of between restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. Overall for governmental funds, not a super heavy capital year. but for the most part, kind of saving up for future reserves or for future capital projects. So overall, the capital funds increased in fund balance about $660,000. Main thing being this municipal reserve fund increasing due to transfers in from the general fund. And the main reason in general that the funds increase was just transfers in from the general fund. So now here, moving into your enterprise funds. So all the enterprise funds will have a format like a slide formatted like this. On the top half, you see the last 4 years of operating activity broken out between your operating receipts, disbursements, as well as your debt payments. And then the bottom half here, you see the cash balance compared to a minimum target balance, which in this case is the following year's debt service obligation plus 6 months of operating costs. So in the water fund, what you're seeing is your cash balance is meeting and exceeding that operating target. The other thing to keep in mind with enterprise funds is that, they're meant to be self-sufficient, so they also have to pay for future capital projects that may come up and things of that nature. So sewer, that was the water fund. Now looking at the sewer fund here. So again, looking at that operating activity up top between your receipts, disbursements, and debt payments. A couple things to note with the sewer fund is you see that those debt payments have gone down significantly over the last few years due to the PFA loans maturing in the last couple years. And that's why you see this target balance going down between 21 and 2022 with that debt service obligation being decreased quite a lot. So again, mostly because of those PFA loans maturing, right now, meeting and exceeding that operating target, but always keep in mind, but the potential for future capital needs. Ambulance fund. The one thing I'll point out here is the operating activity basically breaking even maybe losing a little bit of money or at least in 2023. And then the bottom half there, you see the cash balance in the ambulance fund for the last 4 years. So right now, probably something to keep an eye on in that fund is the cash balance in the ambulance fund right now being, a little bit below that operating target balance of 6 months of operating costs. And then stormwater fund, same format here with receipts, disbursements, and debt payments on the top, and then that cash balance below. So pretty healthy cash balance right now in the stormwater fund. And then kind of same story for the recycling fund. You see that operating activity in the top half, then your cash balance on the bottom half, which has been increasing steadily over the last 4 years in the recycling fund. And then this graph here just shows your total cash and investment balance on hand at the end of each year from 2021, 2022, and 2023, and then just broken out between all your different fund types. So overall, your cash balance did increase this past year to about almost 13.8 million, mostly just due to the positive operating activity of your governmental funds. All right, and then we ended off with key performance indicators. So this is when we compare the city of Cannon Falls to certain peer groups. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the city of Cannon Falls compared to Class 4 cities, which is cities of a population of 10,000 or less all across the state, and then cities in Goodhue County as well. Other note I'll make here is that the most recent data we have from the state is from 2021 still waiting on that 2022 data. So unfortunately, we're kind of comparing, more current data of Cannon Falls to peer group data from 2021, which isn't ideal, but still good to kind of compare. So when we're looking at tax rate and tax per capita, that tax rate has been coming down to where you're probably kind of right at that Class 4 city average. It sort of depends what happens, of course, these next couple of years. And then it looks like you have been below that Goodhue County average. And then kind of the tax per capita, you've kind of been a little bit below that Goodhue County average, and then above the average when you look at Class 4 cities statewide.
Tyler, can you elaborate more on what's a Class 4? Is it based just population?
Yep, statewide population of at least 10,000 or less. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Then here, just looking at debt per capita. So your debt balance has been decreasing steadily over the last 4 years. And, projecting this out, probably looking at below average debt per capita for both of those peer groups. And then this last one here is your current expenses per capita as well as your capital expenses per capita. So current expenses per capita would just be all your typical operating costs, where capital expenses per capita is kind of your capital project and capital equipment costs. So here what we're looking at on current expense per capita, at least on the last available peer group data we have, pretty close to that Goodhue County average and probably just a little bit above the class 4 city average. And then capital expenditures per capita, you do see kind of some volatility here because this one really does kind of depend on when your projects take place or when your big capital purchases take place. So overall, the last 4 years, not necessarily super busy years over the last 4 years, I would say, just in comparison to your peer groups at least. And that's what I got, so I'll open it up for any questions or comments about the audit.
Any questions from the council? None?
Well, not, I gotta find my
All right.
And I don't think it's necessarily for the audit, but on the recycling fund, that we have almost $250,000 in, do we have capital expenses in that? I keep thinking, where are we gonna spend that money? Maybe that's a fee we could have less.
Yes, so I was just mentioning to Sarah that there's 250,000 and there's no capital, because waste management takes care of it for us,
Yeah.
right? So,
So maybe we can lower those rates, which I realize is not an audit, but it came from your chart.
right.
Anything else from the council? All right. Thank you, Tyler.
All right, thanks for having me. Have a great
you.
meeting.
Thank you.
Motion to approve the audit, please.
Yep. I would entertain a motion to approve the audit that has just been presented to us.
So moved?
Motion from Diane,
Second.
second from Ryan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, that gets us to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items may be adopted under one motion as presented or may be removed for discussion and resolution as council business. I'll go through them. Item A, just and correct claims, the accounting period that ended June 12th, 2024. B, meeting minutes for June 4th, 2024 council meeting. Item C, resolution 2761, accepting a Sweet Needs Bakery gift card donation of $100 from, is it SIG and Max for the police department? All right. And item D, approve peace officers' assistance at the Goodhue County Fair. Item E, resolution 2762, accepting a monetary donation of $1,500 from Invenergy to the fire department. Item F, approve the hiring of firefighters. Item G, approve the monthly water bills for the fairgrounds. Item H, approve Cannon Valley Trail support. Item I, approve submittal of armor equipment to grant program application for the fire and ambulance departments. And item J, approve John Birch Park grant applications. Are there any the council would like to pull down? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion from Jepson,
Second.
second from Mr. Lindell. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Gets us to our council business for tonight. Resolution 2763, approving variances for Dollar General. Zach, if you'd like to take this one over.
Yeah, for sure. So at the June 10th Planning Commission meeting, Dollar General presented a updated site plan to the Planning Commission. The updated site plan showed a reduction to the proposed building in square footage and also a general shift towards Dakota Street. These slight changes eliminated the need for one of the variances, so tonight Dollar General is asking for a 9-space reduction to the required parking, as well as a 13.7 front setback variance. These two variances are, of course, accompanied by the conditional use permit request and the conditions that must be met in order to operate a retail business in the residential business district. Both this request was approved by Planning Commission last Monday, I believe, so that's why it's in front of you tonight. Travis Munn, the Senior Project Manager for Dollar General, is here tonight to answer any questions you guys might have. So with that, I guess we'll take any questions. Thank you.
We're open for question and answer, or, I mean, public hearing versus not public hearing. I'm just wondering if, how normally public input is just public input and it's not back and forth, or a public hearing, and this is neither, so I'm just wondering if there is a back and forth.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council members, tonight is not a public hearing. You may engage and with the applicant and ask questions to receive information if needed. Is everyone comfortable with the legal framework for variances and conditional use permits and the findings that will need to be made in support of a decision one way or another?
If you would like to walk us through that.
Yep. So there's two types of approvals before you tonight, or requests. The conditional use permit, I think, is something we're all pretty familiar with. This proposed use is a permitted conditional use in the zone, which means that as long as the applicant complies with the conditions the council deems appropriate for this use, they're entitled to carry on that use. This is the time where you would impose conditions that are enforceable down the road. Oftentimes that's lighting, glare, dust, noise, hours of operation, fence construction, we heard that earlier today, things of that nature that are attached to the use and run with the land. So that's a very important key part of that approval process. Conditional use permits are generally approved under your code when it's compatible. The proposed use is compatible with surrounding uses. It's reasonable, and you've addressed any specific problems or issues that could arise with this proposal through the use of appropriate and reasonable conditions. So that one's pretty straightforward. A variance is slightly different. The variance is not related to the use of the property. It is a more dimensional deviation from zoning code requirements, such as setbacks. And I think that's primarily what's before you tonight. And variances have a very particular legal standard imposed by state law and by the city code. So you must make some determinations as to whether the requested variances each are in harmony and generally consistent with the city code requirements and the comprehensive plan. That's a mandatory discussion or findings. You must also find that the applicant has shown practical difficulties. That's that three-part standard that talks about, is each variance separately reasonable under all the facts and circumstances that's been presented to you? Is it necessary due to a plight of the landowner not created by the landowner? So that's looking to the property itself and why the need for the variances exist, and as long as it's not something the landowner has created, but more the nature and characteristics of the land itself. And then finally, the variance will not, if granted, alter the essential character of the neighborhood. You'd see that a lot. I know this is not residential, but if somebody wants to put a massive garage in a very small neighborhood and things of that nature, does it generally fit in with the surrounding area? So those are your kind of main discussion points. And then I would recommend, as far as process, once the discussion is had and you feel comfortable, you do need to move and make a decision on each request separately. Though the discussion is together, if you will. You can, I think for our purposes and for staff, we've talked about it extensively. We'd prefer that you make a decision and then direct the city attorney to draft the findings consistent with whatever decision you make tonight. So there'll be 3 motions at the end of your discussion. You may approve or deny individually. You don't have to approve them all. If you deny one, approve another one. It gets a little complicated, but we can work through that if you have questions.
When you say 3 separate votes, 1 for each variance, then 1 for the conditional use permit?
Yes, and you can do it in either way. To me, the use is sort of primary. So if they can't use it under conditional use permit, the variances are moot.
Oh, what if the reason for voting down is because not allowing the variances?
Yep, and that'll be part of your discussion. And if that's the case, that's why we want 3 separate ones. If you do the variances first, and if the decision is to grant the variances, I would strongly condition that grant on the grant of the conditional use permit as well. So it's a nice, neat package tied together.
So we're open for discussion or questions. I guess my first question would be, if you wouldn't mind answering, with a new build, I know that in the previous meeting, we had people say at the county level, variances are usually for situations where a building exists and the land and the boundaries or whatever. With a new build, asking for variances seems extremely rare. How come there is not an option that is not asking for variances, neither setbacks or the parking? Was there never the ability to have a design that would fit? Because I guess my point would be, if this isn't a good fit and you have to ask for, then why aren't we trying to find a place that is a good fit?
Sure, that's a great question. And as far as different properties that my client has looked at, I can't really speak to that. I don't get involved in the real estate side of things. I do know that there was one other parcel that they had considered. I don't know the details of why the deal didn't happen, but this was their second choice. So that's how they ended up with this piece of property. Dollar General typically searches for property. They have a point that their marketing team figures that they want to be, and then they have, the real estate department has some flexibility within a certain distance. I believe it's up to a mile in either direction of that point, and that this site fell within that and was for sale. And you know, they will approach other people. This one just happened to be for sale, and well, they went with that one. We did try to come up with a plan. So my role in all this is I work for a civil engineering firm out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. Been working with Dollar General for about 18 years, I believe it is, all across the Midwest. So we try to come up with site plans that don't need variances. I mean, that's our goal. And I do believe that this site, if you look at the configuration of the property lines, does have some legit hardships. The site is kind of an awkward shape, and for lack of a better term, it's kind of an L shape, which makes laying out a site very, very difficult. It's kind of like a pie shape or triangular shaped piece of property. Those are also very, very difficult to get anything to fit and make sense. So we did try with a 10,640 square foot store, which is a standard footprint for them. They have 3 sizes, one's 12,480, 10,640, and then 9,100. They wanted the 10,640 based on the market research. After hearing the concerns of the council meeting previously, one of the suggestions was to shrink the building. We did. We went down to the next standard footprint, which is a 9,100. So we tried our best to alleviate some of those concerns by shrinking the building down, which did eliminate one of the variances, which was the drive aisle variance on the north side of the property.
10 foot on the railroad track, is that one?
Correct. Correct. Yep. So we did alleviate that variance. So we did hear your concerns and did what we could to try and accommodate that as much as possible. So I think between the shape of the property being an awkward shape to try and fit, squares on there, being an L shape, it didn't work real well. And then also with the railroad easement that does cut through a portion of our property, which is a unique situation, does again generate a bit of a hardship with trying to get something to fit on there and address the concerns that the railroad had. We wanted to keep our building as far away from the railroad as possible to limit any extra safety concerns, which ultimately resulted in the front yard setback variance that we're requesting.
Questions, comments, discussion from the council?
Was there any talk of turning the building or maybe moving the building to a different location on the property so that the variance wouldn't be needed?
Yes, so that was, when we went back to the drawing board after the previous council meeting, that was one of the first things I did the very next morning, was I sat down and tried to come up with alternative options, completely changing the design. And there was just really no way, with the shape of the property, the safety concerns and the easement, to really avoid the need for a variance.
Do you know why Dollar General wants that area?
Don't specifically, other than I know that they, like I said before, they pinpoint a spot where they ideally want to be, and then they have some flexibility within that to go either direction. So this just happened to be the closest property that was available to their desired location.
Now, did you say Dollar General's purchasing the land?
So how it works is a developer, who is actually who I work for, their preferred developer in Minnesota for Dollar General. They purchase the property, they construct it, own the building, and then sign I believe it's a 20-year triple net lease with Dollar General.
Okay.
Do you happen to know what the other property was that they were interested? When you say they kind of like a 1 mile zone, do you know where the other one might have been?
I don't, I apologize.
No, that's
I could get that information if you need.
That's okay. What we're looking at tonight, I get it. Any other questions or comments or discussion from the council?
Well, just on behalf of the planning commission, we did spend a lot of time, we talked a lot, and at the end of the day, and especially if it's all right with the 8-foot fence on the north side, I believe.
That's not part of this.
That's what the railroad guy just said.
Right, but that will be under the conditional use
Right,
permit.
right. I think the planning commission spoke in favor of it.
If I may, to add to that, I did speak with, I think it's Lane, I think is his name, with the railroad.
Progressive Rail?
Yes, so I spoke with him yesterday. We had a nice conversation. I listened to his concerns, and his two major concerns were semis leaving on the 4th Street entrance or exit and turning north, crossing the railroad tracks right there. So one of the things we discussed was putting up signage there that no semi-traffic can turn left and cross the tracks. He was fine with that. He liked that idea. And then the other thing was the fence along our north property line to, as a safety concern, to deter people from crossing the tracks there that may be, walking within the parking lot or whatnot. Now, the gentleman before, I think he misspoke. He said 8 foot. Lane and I talked about a 6 foot because I think, and Zach maybe can help me, 6 is standard by code. I don't know that you can go 8 foot.
Oh,
by
sure,
code.
for fencing purposes.
We can get a variance for that.
I prefer not to.
Another variance.
But Lane and I talked about a 6 foot, so I want to make sure that was clear, and we agreed to that, as long as the council, votes in favor of this tonight, then we'd go ahead and install a fence, that would be shown on our site plan when we come through that process.
Was it talked about, so going back to the 4th Street, the exit, so you said trucks won't make a left to go through, because that's basically is that the parking lot there behind?
Equipment.
Yep.
But that's
It is technically a street, yep.
Yep.
But wasn't it talked about exiting and then trying to work their way back to County Road 17 instead of just coming right back out to 5th Street? Or was that?
Right.
Okay.
Yep, so there was some confusion, that was my fault, on the previous site plan that the council saw with a lot of truck movement showing there right at the intersection of 5th and Dakota. And typically what I try to do is show like a worst-case scenario, that if the truck were to enter and exit there close to that intersection, from a maneuvering standpoint, it's possible. Is it ideal with traffic being there? No. But it is possible. But the more realistic route is to come off of 17 down 1st and around, and either enter off of Dakota, then exit out onto 4th, or vice versa, 4th or through the site and then back out onto Dakota. 1st is a pretty heavy industrial road. There is some residential there, a little bit further to the northeast, but everything along there is commercial, industrial. So it gets a lot of heavy traffic, I would assume, semi-traffic, and our traffic as far as heavy semis would be one WB67, which is a full-size semi, once a week. So it's not like there's traffic coming in and out of there every day with semis. It would be one delivery a week with a big semi. The other deliveries that come on a more regular basis are either a small box truck, a van. They're much smaller vehicles.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, or discussion?
I raised this question during the planning commission, asking you if you could squeeze the front down, so we went, the only variance you'd need is parking, and I think that would be a movement in the right direction. But I guess it didn't really fly at the commission. I don't know if that was still on the table or not.
Will you say that again, Steve?
I don't remember what I just said. No, the front variance,
The setback.
or the setback, the variance that they would need for the setback on the front, if they could squeeze the building down just a little bit more, so there wasn't a need for a variance other than parking.
Right.
I don't know if that would,
How close is it?
to 13,
Would the next footprint down make that variance?
9100 is the smallest they have.
Smallest? Okay.
Yep. And an option we talked about at the planning commission meeting was to reduce that drive aisle or eliminate it on the north side. We couldn't get the delivery vehicles to maneuver through the site. If that were to be the case, we could narrow it to a one-way. It still makes things very tight along that north side.
Okay.
And then it pushes the building even closer to the railroad, which kind of defeats the purpose of the concerns with the railroad.
What's that? Okay. Yeah, right. The safety issue. Shelley, if you don't mind my asking, kind of a pause in the action, but the parking requirement, is that a local ordinance or is that kind of just on par for cities of our size? Because somebody had commented to me, they said it seems like an awful lot of parking spots for a building of this size, and I'm like, well, did we come up with this? Has this been in our, or is this something that towns of our size or in this community have always kind of been at this ratio?
Parking is very community specific, and different communities attack it differently. I think it's set by the code in the proportion to square footage or however that's done, right, Zach? And different cities treat it differently and treat different zones differently. So there's really no blanket answer to whether yours is on par with other cities. I think the focus can be on whether that reasonableness aspect of it, that can be based on, that's a deviation of several spots, but will that impact the use and how will that impact the surrounding area? Considerations like that.
Yeah. So if the parking lot were to fill up and then people start parking on Dakota or things of that nature.
Right, to create more hazards off-site, if this is anticipated to be a heavily parked area, that might relate to some information about usage store, how many people, how many cars, or, things that practical considerations of, is this lot going to fill up?
Right.
Even with the variance.
Correct. Yep, that's a great point. And I did provide, Zach, did you get that to the council? Okay. I did provide Zach with a letter from Dollar General. Happy to give this to the council if you'd like to see it. But basically what it says is that they have over 20,000 stores in operation currently and have gathered a lot of significant data, parking being one of those points. And that for this size store, 32 spaces is plenty for what they need. I've been personally doing this with Dollar General for almost 13 years. My company for 18. 30 is actually what they require for a 9,100 square foot store. So we're actually providing a little bit more than what they typically require. And, it even states in their letter here that, this is even considering their peak shopping season around Christmas. So they don't foresee any concerns with 32 parking spaces. Their turnover is pretty quickly with customers. They're not in there. It's not like a shopping mall, but they're in there for hours on end shopping. You know, you go in, you get something quick and you leave. So they have a pretty quick turnaround. So the parking lot very, very rarely, if ever, fills up.
Anything else from the council, or should we, any discussion?
Maybe a question for Shelley here, Mark. What you said at the beginning, you said some of the reasons for variances, you said they cannot be created by the landowner. Is the fact that they want to build it at a certain size instead of, what was it, 13 feet less, would that be, in your opinion, caused by the landowner? By them wanting a bigger store than what is allowed?
Councilmember Lundell, not necessarily. Practical difficulties looks at that piece of the test looks at the plight, as I'm quoting from the statute, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. And in my experience, those are things like there's a deep slope off this corner of the lot, forcing the development this direction. There is a, you know, some kind of topographical issue with the property. The shape of the property may be an issue, things of that nature. I don't know that the focus should entirely be on the fitting of the building size on the property.
Okay.
I think where that comes in is an overall reasonableness. If you think that this use is reasonable, and part of that is in the sizing of the building and the use and where it's going, I'd put it in that context versus the plight and the site characteristics.
Any other points, questions?
I guess I would just say that I do kind of struggle with doing variances on new construction based on previous situations. On the other hand, I think these are pretty minor, and I appreciate them going back and understanding the concerns that we had and adjusting. I mean, the parking lot thing seems, I mean, whatever.
I would agree that the parking lot seems lesser. The setback itself might be the biggest issue. Like you said, variances, when the other gentleman came into the previous meeting, trying to fit something into a lot, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of variances on new builds. I'm just gonna, that alone right there is like a red flag. Because I think certain citizens have brought that point up of variances are meant to be adjustable for different situations, structures that might already exist, property lines, the lay of the land, things of that nature. New builds, it doesn't really apply. In this case, it does, but are there adjustments that could be made, or is this just not the right fit and there should be, you know, find a property that is a better fit? To me, that's the crux of the issue, because variances are a hot button issue. You know, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And yes, parking, that one seems really, it's the lesser of the two. It's close to what we're asking. The setback, and I know that they did make the adjustment on the railroad. However, that still doesn't take away the fact that there's two variances that are being asked of us tonight. And I'm not disappointed in the planning and zoning. I watched most of that meeting, but the questions and I think the point, and it's not setting a precedent, they are variances and it depends on the situation. But for us as a council to say, you know, we're gonna throw everything aside and allow people to ask for variances in situations, you know, we're talking about a retailer in a business/residential zone and a lot that is on a corner of a busy street that's right next to the railroad tracks. It's a unique situation.
Yeah, and I know Steve's talked about this a lot in the past, about setting precedents with, you know, when you start, if you do something for someone, should you do it for the next person? And like you said, every situation can be different, but if you tell one person no and then tell the next person yes, how does that make you look? Or
Yeah.
vice versa?
Right. Well, and the reasoning. I mean, this is a business and residential zone, so we're asking for variances for Dollar General, but what if it was somebody that wanted to buy the land and build their dream home and it's so many, square feet and it fits completely? It's like, I know we're looking at what's in front of us now, and I don't want to do the hypothetical. I'm just saying it's the possibility of the fact that the zone there's some variety there as well. Anything else from the council?
Yeah, and I do appreciate your concern. And the thing is, I know we've also granted variances in the past. Sometimes we've denied, sometimes we granted. And I think I appreciate that reasonable use, and I look at that particular property, and it's not really residential. Yes, there are the 3 homes on the east side of,
And on the north side of the
Street.
tracks?
but this is not what I'd call a real residential type neighborhood. Most of the rest of the stuff down Dakota is business. I mean, there are already semi-trucks driving in and out. You go down 4th Street and it's, for the most part, with the exception of those few little homes. And so I find it to be a very reasonable request for what I consider a rather minor variance. Dakota Street is not, and it with its location, probably ever going to be a major traffic pattern there, being it dead ends into the Riverside Terrace. 17 is your major road. And so to have a variance there, it just, it doesn't seem to be that big an objection to me. And there again, this brings a new business to town. It takes a property that's been vacant for years and is an eyesore and creates a tax basis for us, as well as for people on the north side of town to have another option for shopping.
Anything else from the council?
Not from me.
I just don't like variances on a new property, on a new build. And I know there's a lot of trucks, but I don't know, that seems tight.
Ryan, anything? Well,
Ready for a motion?
everybody seems to be so, and let's be careful with the wording, because if it's introduced and seconded, if it's approval or denial, just pay attention to, whoever makes the motion and does the second, which direction are we going here? And does it have to be a 2/3 majority because this is being seen again, or what's the vote that needs to?
3/5.
Okay.
Why is it 3/5?
For conditional uses and
What
variances.
is? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not just passing.
Oh, wow.
It's the fact that it's a variance and conditional use.
So you want to do the conditional use first?
Well, actually, our agenda has us with the,
But Shelley suggested doing the conditional use first.
you'd rather go conditional use first?
In my mind, if the use
'Cause if
is
that
not
fails, then-
approved,
yeah.
but if you do that, you also must do the variances separately. We can't just
So that it's on the
move them out.
record, so that it's not appealed.
And there's a decision that can be appealed if necessary. But you can flip that.
Okay.
And regardless of how the agenda is, I'd be okay with that if it works better for you guys.
Okay. So if you guys would like to entertain a motion to approve or deny the conditional use permit.
I would move that we approve the conditional use permit,
I'll second it.
subject to the variances.
All right, so the motion is made by Johnson, the second was by Cronenberger.
Were we gonna put the fence thing in there, or was that already part of it?
Oh, is that the,
That does have to be included in the conditional use.
Yes.
with a 6-foot fence on the northern boundary.
All right. Or privacy?
Chain link? What type?
What did the railroad want?
They didn't specify.
Is,
Be happy to do either.
if that's the case, I'd rather have like the privacy for the sake of that one home that's sitting there. But
Well, and because 6-foot kids are gonna jump over that chain link.
Yeah, chain link would be, yeah.
chain link,
6-foot privacy
kids
wooden
would.
fence.
Right?
I don't know what's happening.
which way do we want to go?
Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
also highlight, since you'll direct me to draft findings, a couple other discussion points on conditions were the truck route, the semi-truck route as they exit the property. I don't know if you want any conditions relating to which direction, where they want to go. I think also there was there's a signage issue that was brought up in terms of prohibiting semis from turning left across the tracks. That seemed to be important to your discussion. You could choose to add those conditions if you believe them to be reasonable.
And do we have any rules on the amount of lights and how far away they need to be from
That's
everything? Is
isn't
that all
so?
part of it? Is that all part of the CUP already?
It should be highlighted in the packet what the actual conditions are to approve it.
Okay.
But the condition you'll want, Zach, is that the use complies with all applicable performance standards in the city code. That way we can address that, and that's a requirement that they would have
Yeah.
regardless. You can just make that general.
And I don't think they're 24 hours, but, so that wouldn't be an issue if we wanted to limit that, okay.
So then I modify my motion to approve the conditional use permit with the addition of the 6-foot chain link,
No.
privacy fence on the north boundary, and signage prohibiting left-hand turn onto 4th Street off of,
From trucks.
Yep.
You want another one thrown in there?
no?
Would you still second?
Yep.
Okay.
A second.
So the motion by Johnson, second by Cronenberger. Are you going to be
I'm
abstaining?
gonna be abstaining.
With the abstention, I'd like a roll call vote the first time around.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah,
If this
discussion.
passes, but the variance doesn't after this, then what?
Fails.
Well, can they, I'm just wondering what would happen then?
That's an excellent question, Councilmember Lundell, and there would be different options. They certainly can see if that will work and proceed without the variance that they didn't get, or 1 or 2 variances. They also have the opportunity to appeal and move forward in that context.
Okay.
So, any further discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote.
Gesme.
Abstain.
He's
Abstain. Grote.
No.
Jepson.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Cronenberger.
Yes.
Lundell.
Yes.
1, 2, 3,
4-1?
4-1.
You didn't like the
4-1 for the
condition
approval.
either, or you just forgot what we were voting?
How does that work for?
I don't like the variance.
We weren't voting on the variances.
Yep. There you go.
Calculator.
So with that, then we have to vote on the variances, and we have to do those individually, so the variance of the setback or the parking, whichever.
It passed.
You want to move this time, Laura?
Sorry. Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the variances.
Do we do them separately?
Individually.
Oh,
Individually.
yeah,
The parking.
I'll make a motion to approve the parking variance.
Second.
Motion by Cronenberger, second by Johnson. Abstention again?
Abstain.
Okay, we'll do another roll call vote then.
Gesme.
Abstain.
Grote.
Yes. Or I.
No, this is the variance. You don't want
This
the
is-
variance. I'm just
The
trying to,
parking one, right.
Okay,
We're
I'm
voting on
sorry.
them separately, the park.
I just want to make sure she knows.
Voting to approve, the-
Sorry.
Jepson.
voting to approve the variance.
Okay,
There you go.
sorry.
Jepson.
My bad.
Okay.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Cronenberger,
Yes.
Lindell,
Yes.
5-0. Mm-hmm. And then I would entertain a motion for the variance of the setback.
So moved?
Motion from Johnson,
Second.
second from Cronenberger. And we'll do the same roll call vote.
Gesme,
Abstain.
Grote,
No.
Jepson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Cronenberger,
Yes.
Lindell,
No.
3-2. 3/5 pass. Okay. All right. That brings us to, yeah,
Please direct the city attorney to draft findings consistent with the council's decisions on these two items.
if the city attorney would please draft information that is consistent with the council's findings tonight, or the council's vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Your Honor.
You almost said your honor. I was gonna say,
All right, let's get
I've
overboard.
got the gap. This will be the closest I ever come.
Congratulations on your promotion.
Right.
Was that in the budget? Did we have
don't know.
that brings us to our active transportation summit. Jed.
The Cannon Falls Active Transportation Planning Committee will be hosting a summit next Tuesday and Wednesday. It would be June 25th and 26th. The summit is going to take the information off of the, I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to view the Cannon Falls Active Transportation Plan that was on the city website. There's also an interactive map where people are able to drop pins, and I think there was 84 pins dropped.
Great.
So they're going to take information gathered from that, and also we're going to do a walk and bike around town, several different key points of town. And then MnDOT is going to fund a demonstration project. What that project is, we don't know exactly. But this doesn't need a vote or anything. This is just to raise awareness and invite everybody to attend this if you have the chance, and also for the public to come out. Laura, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, so it, like Jed said, it's a 2-day event next Tuesday and Wednesday, and I've been working with our project team from MnDOT, and so we'll be doing different segments with different community members around town. So some of you have, I know like Diane or Council Member Diane or Johnson, you have asked to participate in this. We've got our chamber breakfast is actually, that's going to be the focus of our chamber breakfast next week, is going to be downtown and kind of doing a walk audit of the downtown area. We'll be doing one at the school. I've coordinated with the Cannon Kids director, where she's going to select some kids with parent permission, of course. But we won't leave the school campus, but it'll be talking with some of the kids and kind of walking the area and identifying some difficult areas that they feel is a little challenging for walking or biking to school. Then in the afternoon, we will be doing a bike tour kind of around Cannon Falls, not on the trail system, but more so throughout the community. And again, it'll be all based off of the map, the pinpoints that people have put on the map. I did speak at the senior center last week and gave an opportunity to the senior community that maybe weren't as savvy to interact with the tool, or maybe wouldn't be engaging on an online survey. So I gave them an opportunity to also give some input, and they had some very good information to add as well. So I communicated that to our team. And anyway, so we'll do our walk bike audit, gather some information, and then we'll be doing a workshop on most of Wednesday here in council chambers, and bringing out some big old maps of town and just kind of trying to figure out what would be a good test area to set up a semi-permanent project, whether it involves striping, paint, on the, creating a bike and walk lane, or it's setting up a crosswalk, or setting up some of those stanchions that maybe we glue down or something to see if it helps to quiet traffic or create a safer space. So that's what we'll figure out. That's what MnDOT will help us do. We actually will have people representing the Metro, since we're divided in half in Cannon Falls. We'll have Metro and District 6 both on our project team to help us. So, and then there's about $17,000 from that project budget that will help create our our demonstration project. So there could be one or two, depending on what they're going to do. So if anyone is interested that's in the community that's either watching or that's here this evening, you can contact me, and I can get you on that list, but it will be next Tuesday and Wednesday. So hopefully we'll be able to figure out some good things, get that plan, and then again, the goal then is for us to be able to apply for some grants in the future with this information so that we can make some permanent changes where we need to in the community.
I was gonna say, does this, I'm sorry if you said it and I missed it, but does this include the Safe Way to School, or that's a separate?
That's a separate program, but we can use this study or the information from this in order to apply for that.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. No action needed for the Active Transportation Summit. Perfect. Moves us on to item D. As I said when we did the agenda at the beginning, the City Administrator Succession Committee, Laura Cronenberger and Ryan Jepson and I will be that committee. We will set a date to meet. I think we will probably meet with Neil first and then go from there, and for actionable items to deal with the department heads, and then start the ball rolling in the process of finding Neil's replacement for 2025. No action necessary. Brings us to item E. We will take a vote on this, but just we announced earlier that we'll do a work session on July 23rd at 5 p.m. and we will invite people who have received donations in our budget to come to the meeting, share their information with us of how they will use the funds or how they would intend to use the funds so that we can include that in our budget discussion. I would entertain a motion to approve that so that we can set it on the calendar that we'll have a 5 o'clock work session on July 23rd.
So moved.
We'll say motion by Jepson, second by Johnson. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Work session is set. Gets us to reports. Laura, would you mind talking about the EDA? I'm trying to recall that one as well. I don't think it was.
Let's see. I guess I'm trying to think of, active transportation has kind of been my focus lately, just trying to get this all coordinated. Hardwood Estates, I'm trying to think of my last report, if we had broken ground yet. Fieldstone Homes has broken ground. Did I say that last time? Okay. So we have 2 homes that have broken ground in Hardwood Estates. We have we've closed on 3 lots total. I'm trying to think of what else is happening. I think working with the fire department and the ambulance, working on some grants to try to get them some new radios, and also they have some other equipment. So I've been meeting with them over the last probably month and a half, trying to scrape and claw to try to find them some funds for some things. And then with one of the consent items, also be working on getting some outdoor like amenities for John Birch Park. Once that is complete, then we'll get some picnic tables, benches, and receptacles and that kind of stuff too. So now that we've got that green light, we'll move forward with finding some things like that that we can install once that's done. So that's it.
All right. Thank you. Public Works Park Board. If anybody would like to speak on that, I know a lot of that is in tonight's consent agenda and meeting tonight. Oh, okay.
I think everything was on there.
Usually I can see the light on.
Most of it was on, yeah. Finance Committee, again, most of our stuff tonight with looking at the budget in our work session, and then Neil and the plan to work on a replacement for next year. Library Board also met on June 10th.
Library Board meeting was canceled very last minute.
All right, okay. And the Planning Commission.
Planning Commission met on June 10th. Items on the docket were a public hearing to discuss the variances and the conditional use permit for Dollar General. Also, representatives from Bethel's Rock Church were here to discuss possible moving to the south side of town. That was just an informal discussion, so nothing, no business was taken care of there. Just
All right.
informational.
All right, thank you. We'll go around the horn, department heads. Jed?
McNamara was hoping to do the mill and overlay up on Holiday Ave, but weather has not worked well with us this week. So we are hoping to possibly proceed next week. Their mill machine, they thought they were going to be able to have it in town this week. So I don't know where McNamara, the weather's not been cooperative. John Birch Park, we moved, baseball is now done. We moved the 2 containers. On the third base side, it looks like we will be breaking ground shortly. And then Blakeboro will be working on the wall side after the 4th.
Okay.
And then we're just, moving along with the other projects we have in town. So we're making progress on everything. Weather has not been our friend this week.
I know that the Historical Society removed some of the original limestone from the wall. They put together several pallets because they want to keep that because it's the original limestone from the mill. So they're going to do something with that. I know that we had to approve that they could take that.
Correct.
Are we going to do any kind of ceremony or anything for when the big equipment gets there and they start to do the, a shovel in the ground before they start to tear that wall apart? Or you said it'll be before the 4th?
After Blakeboro isn't going to start work until after the 4th.
Okay.
I think July 8th was the official date. So
why was the 17th of June? That was, I know
that's when baseball was done.
Okay.
So that was
That's just the way
when
they're
we could
scheduled.
start moving everything out of the way to start doing work.
Got it. Thanks, Jed. Zach?
I guess nothing tonight.
All right. Laura?
No.
Good. Chief?
Well, unfortunately, the weather is delaying Jed's milling and overlaying, but it is also making the river higher and faster and dirtier than normal. Looking at the weather forecast, we are likely going to see high water again. I do not think it will necessarily get above where it was a few weeks ago, but I think we're going to see some areas of Lower Hannah's Bend wet, along the Little Cannon wet again, but it's really going to be dependent on the weather. If the storms dump the projected, that's what I expect will occur. If for some reason they were to stall and continue to reappear over the same area, that'll change the dynamics. So I'll be continuing to monitor that, working with Dakota County, and if we need to implement any sandbagging and stuff with the fire department, public works, and Goodhue County emergency management. So if you live along the waterway or walking the trails, that type of stuff, just be aware that conditions are going to change as the water levels change.
Shelley, thank you for being with us tonight. Is there anything you'd like to add as long as you're here? No. All right. Thank you. Sarah? Neil? All right. Laura?
Good.
Lisa?
I'm good.
Ryan?
Good.
Derek? Ann?
Just one question, where did the speed sign go?
Speed side is charging right now.
Oh, okay.
We had it down on the road to Public Works and the softball diamonds. Just trying to remind people that's 25 because of the traffic down there. Unfortunately, that area is a little shadier, and much like when we had it on 4th Street, the shade combined with the traffic caused it to go dead. So it's charging, and then we're planning to move it over to the west side tomorrow.
That's all.
Steve?
Does it record the high limit?
He wants to know if it's high score.
Actually, the highest you're going to get it to display out is going to be 44.
Really?
We have it shutting off.
Yeah, now you know.
We have it shutting off at 44 so that so that they don't try to set that record.
Yeah, don't be silly.
Some cities have had that problem. Above 44, the cameras start taking photos so we can send the tickets by mail.
There we go. There we
Or
go.
send Laura.
Challenge accepted.
All right.
That's all I have.
I've got nothing. So I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion from Lisa, second from Ryan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.